Good day. Before we begin, let me introduce myself briefly. I am Funmilayo, a 500 level law student of Adeleke University and an undergraduate intern at HARLEM Solicitors. Today, I'm going to be talking to you on the renewal, surrender, and suspension of telecommunication licenses. I will begin by defining what a license is, the various types of licenses we have in the telecommunication sector, in Nigeria, of course, the laws governing these licenses, that is the renewal, surrender, suspension, or revocation of these licenses. I will go on to tell you the procedures or processes to carry on this renewal, surrender, and suspension of the licenses. Then I'll finish off by telling you the effect this has on the telecommunication operators and the punishment provided for a failure to follow these procedures. Now, what is a license? According to the Oxford Dictionary, a license is a permit granted by an authority to own or use services or to carry on a particular trade. Now, the Licensing Regulations 2019 provide that a license is a communication license granted under the Act. The Act being the Nigerian Communications Act 2003. Now that we know what a license is, let's move on to the various types of licenses we have in the telecommunication industry. We have the class license, the individual license, and the frequency license. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be talking mainly on the class license and individual license. The class license is not a license document. It is more like a registration with the Nigerian Communications Commission to carry out certain activities. Now, some of the activities that fall under the purview of the class license are the sales and installation of terminal equipment, the repair and maintenance of telecommunication facilities, the cabling services, including the laying of tables, operation of telecenters, and so many more. Now, the individual license, on the other hand, is a license document that is granted to specified person to carry out specified activities. Some of the activities or the services that are authorized by individual license are the internet provision, that is provision of internet services, co-location and infrastructure sharing, to mention but a few. Now that we know or we have an idea of what a license is, let's move on to the renewal of a telecommunication license. Section 43 sub 1 of the Nigerian Communications Act provides that a licensee shall before or not later than 6 months to the expiry of its license renew its license, and the renewal fee shall be determined by the Commission and shall be paid upon approval of the application. Now, Regulation 23 provides for the procedures or the processes how an individual license can be renewed. Now, it says that the licensee must submit an application, that is, the licensee must submit an application to renew. The licensee must have obtained and completed forms provided for the renewal, which can be obtained or gotten from the Commission's website. The licensee must have fully done or fulfilled all obligations, that's all license obligations, as a result or to provide or to conduct to get the renewal. The licensee must submit the application, and the application must have been reviewed and found satisfactory by the Commission. Now, let's move on to some of the directives that a company looking to renew its license must follow. The company must show evidence of payment of annual operating levy, the type approval of equipment in use, the submission of network information and statistical data, the payment of spectrum and numbering fees where it is applicable, the submission of individual code of conduct, individual code of practices, the submission of annual ownership report. Now, a license that is not renewed, that is when it is expired, cannot be used. That means it cannot, the Commission, there's a fine. I'm going to say the punishment that is applied or that is provided for the failure to renew a license. Now let's move on to the surrender. Section 44 of the Nigerian Communications Act provides that a licensee may surrender his license to the Commission at any time by written notice, and the written notice, that is, the surrender shall take effect when the written notice is submitted and the original license is submitted along. Regulations 24 sub 1 A to E of the Licensing Regulations 2019 provides that the applicant or the licensee shall submit the surrender form or provide how the licensee or what the licensee should do on how to submit the licensee or the licensee. Exactly. Now, it provides that the licensee must give the commission a 90 days notice before or prior to the actual submission of the written notice. The licensee must give the subscribers a minimum of 60 days notice of the intention to surrender and cancel or terminate operation. The licensee must have, by the date of submission of the application to surrender, must have paid all outstanding regulatory fees owed or due to the commission. Now, the licensee must also ensure that at the date of surrender, he submits or delivers to the commission the original license. The licensee must ensure that or must provide the commission with information to migrate or details of arrangement to migrate existing subscribers to another licensee before the expiration of or before the surrender date. Now, the licensee must also ensure that it does not owe any obligation to any other licensee. The licensee must also ensure that it provides a guarantee an undertaking to guarantee that it shall not or it shall refund existing subscribers payments made for prepaid services. Now, let's move on to the suspension and revocation of license. You might be wondering, when can a telecommunication license be suspended or revoked? But before I get into that, I would like to say that a class license cannot be surrendered, suspended, revoked, or renewed. It can only be registered and deregistered. I'll get into more details before the end of this video. Now, Section 45 of the Nigerian Communications Act provides that a class license or an individual license an individual license must, or the commission has the power by declaration to suspend and revoke telecommunication licenses where the licensee has failed to pay any amount required by the act or the license, where the licensee has failed to follow the provisions of the license or the act or any other subsidiary legislation, where the licensee has failed to or has contravened the provisions of any written law, where the licensee has entered into any receivership or liquidation, where the licensee has entered into any scheme of arrangement, where the licensee has entered any scheme of arrangement. Now, a suspended license cannot be used for operation. As I said earlier, if you remember, I said a class license cannot be suspended or revoked. It can only be registered or deregistered. Now, Section 51 of the Nigerian Communications Act 2003 provides that a class license shall be deregistered where the applicant has failed to follow the provisions of the law, has failed to pay or comply by the provisions of any written law in relation to communications, where the applicant or where the deregistration is in public policy. Now, the effect of the deregistration is that the licensee shall lose the right to conduct any communication services or telecommunication services in relation to which the license was granted. The small can be seen on that on regulations 28 of the licensing regulations. Now, the effect of failure to renew a license is granted or was provided for in regulations 22 of the licensing regulations 2019. It provides that the licensee's name shall be removed from the register of licensees and shall not be renewed unless the licensee has renewed the license. Now, the punishment for still conducting a telecommunication service upon the expiration of its license is that the licensee shall pay an administrative fine relevant to or equivalent to the initial fee for the relevant license and an additional fee of 100,000 for each day the contravention persists. Now, the overall effect for the failure of or for the revocation and suspension of a telecommunication license is that the licensee shall lose the right to conduct telecommunication services for the purpose of which that individual license was granted. Regulations 13 sub 1 provides for the punishment where a person continues to provide telecommunication services without a valid telecommunication license. It says that such person shall be liable to pay an administrative fine of 5 million naira and an additional fee of 500,000 for each day the contravention persists after an order to desist has been issued. Now we've come to the end of this very interesting lecture. And I want to believe you have some questions, either concerning this topic or about Harlem solicitors in general. If you do, please visit our website www.harlemsolicitors.com, and you can find us on our other socials, that is LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram at Harlem Solicitors. Thank you.